Adlib is the smartest way to activate programmatic, built for expert traders yet easy enough for any marketer. Launch across all top DSPs without contracts, overhead, or busy work. Schedule a free trial today and start maximizing ROAS with Adlib. Check out Adlib at getadlib.com. Thank you to MediaOcean for sponsoring Open Market. It started with some friendly banter on X, and now we're running a series of ads recapping the 13 announcements they made in June. Last week was a partnership between Innovid and LinkedIn for CTV. This week, it's an integration with Affinity Solutions for Innovid XP. Now you can link TV ads to consumer purchases, online and in store, in the same platform you use for your ad serving. Like an Italian beef with hot and dipped, it's amazing when all the right ingredients come together. This feels like this is from ethnic targeting, me and Eric Italian, just getting used by MediaOcean, freaking milked for all we're worth. Tune in next week for another news highlight and visit MediaOcean.com/pod to learn more. MediaOcean.com/pod. Guys, go there. You gotta go there, or Aaron's not gonna sponsor more of these podcasts, all right? Like, Eric and I are trying to make money off this thing, all right? We're not just trying to give you good news. MediaOcean.com/pod. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa. I'm joined by Eric Franchi, and I'm cheating right now on this podcast.
Already. You're cheating already.
I've never had an original thought. It's been Cluely all along.
Amazing. So last week, we're recording this on Friday, June 27th. Most of the ad tech and media industry were in Cannes, doing what everybody does in Cannes. And on the other side of the world, maybe not the other side of the world, but the other side of the West, a startup named Cluely exploded onto the scene after announcing a $15 million investment by Andreessen Horowitz. Cluely's tagline at one point was cheat on everything. Their website has been updated to be a little bit more descriptive. So effectively what Cluely is, and I'll read it off the website, it's an undetectable AI that sees your screen, here's your calls, and feeds you answers in real time. It is a very interesting application of AI, but what we wanted to do was talk about the launch, talk about the company, talk about this from a B2B marketing perspective, because this is what we do.
Yeah. From a product perspective, it's just like if ChatGPT were continuously watching everything you do and sort of feeding you intelligence and answers in real time, which, you know, they're with the whole OpenAI by acquiring Johnny Ive's company and bringing him aboard. Like, clearly the AI companies are still figuring out like what the form factor for this technology is going to be. And this is one answer, right? Is that it won't be locked in a chat box that you have to go to discreetly. It'll just sort of be with you all of the time and feeding you answers. And there will be different devices created to facilitate that.
The easy B2B applications for this are sales calls. You can be a non-technical salesperson doing a call with a customer that might be a little bit over your pay grade in terms of asking technical questions. Cluely, if trained on, both general and your company's data, could make you really, really effective at addressing certain things that you might not call like that.
What's fascinating, Eric, and the reason we're talking about this is that they did not go to market as we are a B2B AI company to like help you do better on sales calls, which is how, any ad tech company would probably go to market with this kind of technology. Actually, the main reason A16Z invested, or when I've heard the partners who backed it describe it, the number one point they raised is distribution. And Cluely has crushed it on distribution over the last 3 to 6 months with viral videos. And the way the CEO, Roy Lee, who's 21 years old, who dropped out of Columbia, describes it is essentially they're just bringing the viral and provocative instincts of like elite TikTok and IG creators to business channels, right? They do it on those channels, but also to, LinkedIn and Twitter, where that kind of approach works as well. Like outrage, provocation, it drives attention, but it's even more effective on LinkedIn and X, especially in the business and tech community, because no one is willing to do that. So by having the tagline cheat on everything and using the example of technical interviews or like being able to anticipate, everything your partner on the date or your interviewer is thinking, or their background, so that you can perform better, by leaning into those provocative angles, they've gone viral over and over again. And what the A16Z people have said is, like, there are so many AI companies, but distribution has become enormously complicated, just because if you were to say it's a continuous AI to improve sales call performance, there would be 100 other startups saying that, and you would never break through. And so while there may be other companies that have similar capabilities, it is in fact the distribution and the willingness to be provocative that has allowed Cooley to generate a lot of attention, generate contracts, and generate this investment.
Yeah. And by the way, random sampling of ad tech people that I talk to every day, most of them have not been following. So this is interesting. They make like highly produced cinematic quality videos. They're short, that are just like, sizzle reels and product descriptions and launch things, and they distribute them across X and elsewhere. The CEO, to your point, is 21. He says wild stuff, and they've built a team to date. I think it's something, in the low teens in terms of headcount, where it's either engineers or people focused on growth who have anywhere personally between 10,000 to 100,000 or more followers across platforms, or people that do both. So to your point, like A16Z is looking at this and saying, this is a cool company with, like a very obvious use case, but some hooks that can make it pretty interesting and irreverent, extremely outspoken and controversial CEO, and a team around him that just gets distribution, that just gets virality. And they've just captured the zeitgeist very, very quickly.
I listened to Roy on the A16Z pod, and the A16Z folks were saying that with the way the current AI ecosystem is shaping up, distribution is the moat, right? Momentum is the moat. It's like you're going to have tons of different products that can do this kind of thing, but they are winning because they are capturing attention, and they're just getting in front of, millions of consumers and then enterprise folks. So Eric, in the spirit of being as practical as possible and giving our audience like lessons that they can take into their own businesses, let's break this down into a number of different pieces. So the first thing I want to hit is to be provocative. I often say to my clients and people in the adtech ecosystem, you need to take inspiration from Hollywood and Washington, D.C. You need a story with heroes and villains. You need to ask yourself, and I do this with all of my new clients, what is wrong with the status quo? Who is responsible for that? Like, how are our customers getting screwed over is how I always put it, and who's screwing them over? And then how are we going to change the industry to their benefit? And most companies are afraid to be provocative because they say, I don't want to piss anyone off. But what Cluely really, really understands, and ad tech companies don't need to go from a 1 on the controversy scale to a 10, which is Cluely. They just need to test the waters and improve gradually, and maybe let's get to a 3 and then a 5 and see how it goes. What people don't get is the number one risk for companies, especially for startups, is not offending people. It's being invisible. It's no one thinking about you at all. I see this in my own business. Sometimes people ask me, like marketers in particular, they're like, oh, you'll like write about ad tech companies and you'll say critical things about them. But like ad tech companies are your clients. Like, how could you do that? And aren't you afraid that like people aren't going to like you? I'm like, no, because the alternative is that I'm invisible and no one's thinking about me at all. Like, right. I would much rather earn the attention and maybe a couple of people get pissed off than have no one thinking about me, which is, by the way, the situation of the vast majority of my competitors, other people who own ad tech, PR, and marketing agencies, who they're not in the feed. Like, no one is thinking about them, right? So you want people thinking about you. And I would add, often what happens when you're thoughtful and provocative is some of the people you're criticizing, even as long as you're not a dick about it, right? Like as long as you're doing it in an intelligent way, they will come around, right? And I bet that'll happen with Cooley too, is like, they didn't say, we're B2B AI for sales intelligence or something. They said cheat on everything. And a lot of people are going to see that and not like it, but they're going to come around. They're going to realize it's a marketing shtick, and they're going to see what the product actually does. And then they're going to get on board with it.
Yes. Why is this such a perennial issue for ad tech companies? I could point to a couple of examples of, companies and leaders saying provocative things and growing their reputation as a result. I think over the last year, the Vanderhooks are probably number one at this. And what's interesting is that they're not the profile of Cluely. They're founders of a 25-year-old publicly traded billion-dollar company. They are arguably saying the most provocative and controversial things. Why the disconnect? And, one theory that I have, and this might be a little bit controversial, is that maybe ad tech needs a Cluey. Maybe ad tech needs a young, fresh, like grown up in the viral era, thinking about distribution from day zero to just shake some shit up. Because I think, perhaps, and we've talked about this on the pod, it's an industry that has plenty of young founders, but also has plenty of founders that have been at this for some time that don't really fit the profile of being that outspoken, that controversial, and apt to do just some like wild SHT that you're seeing, the Cluely team do in terms of the videos, the content, the crazy way of talking. Am I on something there? Or you think that, it's just an excuse?
I think that it's partially personality driven. Like most of the personalities I encounter in ad tech just are not very confrontational, provocative, or disagreeable. Like they tend to just be very like agreeable people. I think it's also in the DNA of the companies. Like I posted about Cluely and how on Twitter and about how like ad tech companies should be learning from it. But instead I see people like sneering at it and being like, oh, this is gross or like amoral or whatever. And I'm just like, guys, it's an effing shtick. Like lighten up a little bit. Like
It's great.
it's sales intelligence. It's the application. They're saying chi on everything. It's just like, yeah, get intelligence on the person you're having a conversation with. Like again, it's like chill out. But I think that does tend to be the sort of conservative, like agreeable disposition of the people in the industry. The other excuse I hear a lot is, well, we kind of partner with everyone, like everyone's frenemies. And like there is a lot of that in the ad tech ecosystem because there are a lot of like there's partnership across the chain and integrations and whatnot. But you need to know who you're not partnering with, like who the 1, 2, or 3 real competitors you have are. And you need to be unafraid to call them out and piss them off, especially if you're a challenger brand, which it's like Vine's the perfect example, right? Because like it's a very successful company, as you said, billion-dollar public company, but they are a challenger brand in a category with a behemoth, which is TTD, which is, 50x their market cap or whatever it is. And so like something I say all the time to my clients is like, there's very little glory in being like the 4th biggest in your category, or let alone like the 10th or 20th largest company in the category. And if you want to upset the apple cart and move into a leadership position or challenge the leader, you have to be willing to take risks that the leader isn't going to take. Though, by the way, that applies to TTD as well, because they're competing with, DV360 and most recently Amazon. And they need to be willing to, throw some hooks at Amazon as well.
But this is very much I think this is about the challengers. And it's also fascinating to me because there's a lot of potential analogs to cheat on everything. If you think about ad tech, because inherently there's so much inefficiency, there's so much, waste, fraud, duplication, bad actors, all of this stuff. It seems like there's such an opening here for someone to really grab onto some of these topics and do some interesting, fun, irreverent stuff. And maybe this is a challenge that we're putting out there. Maybe this is frankly a challenge for me to, put into our portfolio.
Yeah, I think to your point about younger founders, like the first founder who comes to mind in ad tech who could run this kind of playbook is like Dan from
Pantello. He's been there. He's been that irreverent, creating shareholder value, walking through the snow, like, absolutely. God, that's so fun. Yeah, Dan, the world is waiting for you.
All right, Dan, I'm going to tweet that after this recording. We're going to see what we can do. The other thing I'll just hit really quickly on the ability to be provocative is when I tweeted about this, someone, Gareth was like, well, like ad tech companies, they're not really doing anything that innovative, which like putting that aside, of course, there are people who are doing that, but like, it doesn't really matter, honestly. Like, again, what Cluely's doing, like, there are going to be dozens of startups, if there aren't already, who do the exact same thing. It isn't really an excuse that, like, your product isn't super differentiated. Like, you can still differentiate and win on the marketing and the distribution alone.
Is there something to how they're architecting the team that is an opportunity here? You had Mr. Beast, which was a one-person, distribution vehicle. You had, this is a little bit outside of my scope of focus. You have, I think, these like creator houses and, syndicates of creators that kind of do things together and play off of each other. But to me, this is the first company that has been created with this idea of large audiences and people that can go viral in B2B, right? Not B2C, in B2B ever. And maybe there's something here. Maybe it's something like, if you picked, the most controversial and, followed people in a space, put them all together, could you accelerate the traction of a startup or a company by, creating, the Avengers of, insert your B2B focus?
Well, you know what it is, Eric. So like number one is be more provocative. Number two is invest way more in marketing and think a lot bigger, right? So Cluely's team, as per a recent Roy interview that we listened to, he said it was 11 people, 4 engineers and 7 influencers. And so the idea is essentially, if you are not building the product, you are marketing the product, and you do that directly, and you have your own audience that you can immediately market the product to. So it's not just figuring out the story or coming up with ideas or whatever. It's also you're sharing it with your audience. I saw, someone on X share this, and someone else said, well, aren't you conflating marketer and influencer? But to use a very X term, cope, that's cope. Like the two are colliding, right? Like increasingly, if you're going to be regarded as a great marketer, you need to have your own audience and a demonstrated ability to build an audience and cultivate influence, especially in the niche where you want to be marketing companies. And so just think about that. Like just think about 2/3 of a company's employees being focused on audience cultivation and influence building. And then ask yourself, if you're an ad tech CEO, like you're probably putting like 2% of your spending into this kind of effort. And then look at what like the elite companies at Silicon Valley type distribution are doing and ask yourself, like, again, you don't need to go from 1 to 10, but what would it look like if you went to a 5?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's so funny. Again, if we just kind of like go inside ad tech a little bit, Eric Tilbury, he wasn't hired, to my knowledge, he wasn't hired to do what he does, which is start conversations, like give POVs, really like put good ideas out there. But man, is his company benefiting as a result? So again, imagine if you said, hey, this is our plan from the beginning. We're going to hack distribution. We're going to build this into our GTM plan from day one, combined with some of this like AI first technology that everybody's building, help put a company on the map like way, way faster.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Tilbury is the perfect example. So he works at Inuvo. I think he's in, the product solutions team. And
he's not even a marketer. Yeah.
No, yeah. And he is the most visible person at Inuvo. So it's like he is the de facto, chief marketing officer, chief evangelist of Inuvo, because we never hear from anyone else over there. And really, to the point of ad tech companies and ad tech CEOs taking this distribution situation more seriously, someone should freaking hire Eric Tilbury. Like, I've been saying this, like I tweeted this a while ago, but if I were an ad tech CEO of like a relatively scaled company, I would absolutely hire that guy and just be like, I don't know what his skill set is beyond marketing, but even just in marketing, I would be like, can you be like one of our evangelists? Like that guy is more valuable than the vast majority of ad tech marketers who are out there making like 150K a year, whatever it is. Like I would hire him. He's on the marketing team, director, VP level. And maybe he has like marketing instincts beyond content creation and influence building. I don't know. But at the very least, he should be doing that. And because he understands the product side, he would be an interesting like liaison between product and marketing to like tell the story of the granularities of a product.
This is where the world's going, right? We talked about in the post Luma episode, Unilever saying they're 20xing their spend on creators. Lou Pascalis, I just read his Cannes wrap up. If you didn't read it, it's excellent. You should read it. It's an ad exchanger. He pointed to creators as an area where there was like such an obvious leap at Cannes. The social and influencer Cannes has now been called the social and creator Cannes. He put a number out there with a source that creator marketing is going to be like a $500 billion market within the next 5 years or so. Like this is where it's going, right? So you have an opportunity to leapfrog this if you build this into your DNA, either from day one or build this into your DNA today.
This is the future of marketing. This is what I built. sharp pen on, but most ad tech companies are still way behind on it. If you can win on direct to customer channels, social most importantly, but also, newsletters, podcasts, you can make huge gains on distribution alone because you will be top of mind, even if you're selling the exact same thing that your competitors are selling. If you are in a commoditized category, again, it's not an excuse not to run this kind of playbook because actually this playbook can be the answer to that. But the trick is, and this is the third point. So number one, be provocative. Number two, hire and partner with influencers, rethink distribution. Number three, the CEO is the chief evangelist and they are the spokesperson in the face of the company. And I think even though Cluely has 11 employees and 7 are influencers, Roy is the one we're talking about. And he's the recognizable face of the company and the name most people are going to know. His vibe, right, and his personality are clearly driving the vibe and personality of the company overall. So even if you have talented marketers and influencers on your staff or with whom you're partnering, it is going to be the CEO people are going to look to really understand what the company stands for. And they're also the one who's going to have the easiest time generating influence and attention because of that trust that people instinctually afford the CEO. So, I mean, the best company doing this is Scope 3. And what's insane is people say to me all the time, they're like, oh, well, is Brian out there too much though? Or whatever. I'm like, yeah, Brian's generating millions of views and has the attention of the entire advertising industry and is constantly on people's tongues. That's a good thing, any company in the industry would be lucky to have that. So again, ad tech people, it's always the hand wringing and the, well, I don't know, da, 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 da. And it's yeah, if you have the choice between generating massive attention from your audience or not, bet on generating the massive attention. And if 20% of people are jealous and bitter, F them, doesn't matter. What matters is the 80% of people for whom you are going to be top of mind because you're leveraging the CEO and social channels to generate that attention.
Look, this is something that purposefully I've been working on for Aperium for some time now. It's not a secret that I'm on 2 podcasts. It's not a secret that, I'm posting all the time about our portfolio companies.
Yeah.
And what you don't hear is all of the feedback and the follow-up, oftentimes from portfolio companies, when I generate, leads, customers, all sorts of inbound for them through leveraging these distribution channels. So I think we are an example of this in a different way. And this stuff works, folks. And you don't need to be going wild with it and being super controversial. You can just, dial up what you're doing more and follow, this playbook that I think is applicable to everything. But man, it would be kind of neat if there was a Cluely that emerged in our space. It would be super fun.
I'll just leave the audience with one final note, one sort of big wild idea. I think there is a large ad tech company that should explore buying Marketecture. So HubSpot did this with The Hustle. They bought Sam Parr's media company, which had a very large, business, high income, professional audience for, I think it was rumored, almost $30 million. And they obviously still operate it. You and I both listened to My First Million podcast with Sam and Sean. And HubSpot, just they run house ads in every podcast. The CEOs come on a couple of times. They don't ruin it, right? That's always the key, is you don't want to just turn it into a pure propaganda vehicle that then people tune out from. But they sort of quietly leverage the influence in the audience. And my guess would be that has worked out quite well for HubSpot because we could do the math on, however many subscriptions they need to generate. But when you have a massive audience of the exact people who matter to you, it's pretty easy to see how that math works out. My guess is, if the trade desk bought Marketecture, it could generate similar results for them. And they've done that to their credit with the current, but they were kind of cooking it up in-house. There's a little more, people will be critical of it, no doubt. But I think the ability to just automatically get in front of a very large, very engaged audience of the exact people you need to reach and to leverage trustworthy personalities to do that would be worth looking into for the fine corp dev folks at TTD and similar organizations.
It's not a crazy thought at all. Not only did HubSpot, I think, do a great job acquiring MFM or the business behind MFM, Sam's original business, the Hustle, A16Z themselves, which was started this episode.
Yeah.
They acquired Eric Torenberg's media company, Turpentine, which is effectively a podcast network. So I think this idea of like tech acquiring media for distribution is not crazy. And, we'll see it. And being that my firm is an investor in Marketecture, I think it's a great idea.
I forgot about that. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Idea.
But yeah, and like, it's funny, right? Because Ari has done such an effective job rolling up these like undervalued ad tech media properties. It's like, we're talking pennies here in the grand scheme of things for a company like TTD, right? So, or even like a Viant, right? So that's my pitch. When a big ad tech company buys Marketecture, you heard it here first.
Absolutely. All right. Listen, Spun Joe. Appreciate the time, and we'll see you next week, everybody.